So Mahesh has a fundamental. So first is duty of care. Mahesh has a fundamental fiduciary obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution. Mahesh has a fundamental fiduciary obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution. So Mahesh has a fundamental fiduciary obligation. Mahesh has a fundamental obligation. So Mahesh has a fundamental fiduciary obligation. Mahesh has a fundamental fiduciary obligation to protect his employees. So Mahesh has a fundamental fiduciary obligation to protect his employees. Removing Nisha. Breach of professional ethics and workplace justice. Breach of professional ethics and workplace justice. Breach of professional ethics. Breach of professional ethics and workplace justice. Breach of professional ethics. Breach of professional ethics. Breach of workplace justice. So Mahesh has a fundamental obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution. Mahesh has a fundamental obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution. Mahesh has a fundamental obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution. So, duty of care, that he has an obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution. He has an obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution, and removing Nisha would lead to a breach of professional ethics and workplace justice. So he has this obligation, right? So he has a fundamental obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution. So he has a fundamental obligation. So Mahesh has a fundamental obligation. So Mahesh has a fundamental obligation to protect his employees from unjust persecution, right? So he has this obligation. उसपे obligation है to protect his employees. Duty of care. If I am an employer and I have an employee, I have a duty of care. So it would lead to breach of duty of care के साथ ही आ जाएगा professional ethics and workplace justice. Duty of care केयर करने की अपनी एम्प्लॉयज़ के लिए. सो ड्यूटी ऑफ केयर, प्रोफेशनल एथिक्स एंड वर्क प्लेस जस्टिस. सो ड्यूटी ऑफ केयर, प्रोफेशनल एथिक्स एंड वर्क प्लेस जस्टिस. So duty of care, professional ethics and workplace justice. So duty of care, professional ethics and workplace justice. So duty of care, professional ethics and workplace justice. So duty of care and professional ethics and workplace justice. So duty of care, professional ethics and workplace justice. So duty of care and professional ethics. So duty of care में आ गया, it would lead to a breach of professional ethics and workplace justice. So professional ethics, breach of professional. So duty of care, professional ethics, workplace justice. Duty of care में we will have professional ethics and workplace justice. Duty of care में we are having professional ethics, workplace justice. Then democratic principles. Tests Mahesh's commitment to fundamental rights. So tests his commitment to fundamental rights. Democratic principles. Duty of care, democratic principles, procedural injustice. Duty of care, democratic principles, procedural injustice, and business ethics is also there. Procedural injustice, democratic principles, freedom of expression. So care, right? Procedural injustice, democratic principles, business ethics, creative freedom versus religious sensitivities. Reasons are, अब reasons देखो, reasons are 4 रीज़न दिए हैं, ठीक है. Kantian categorical imperative. What does it say? Kantian categorical imperative. Acting on principles that could be universalized without contradiction. So what does it say? Kantian categorical imperative, acting on principles that could be universalized without contradiction, yielding to, act on those principles that could be universalized without contradiction. Kantian categorical imperative says that act on principles that can be universalized without contradiction. So Kantian categorical imperative. Kantian categorical imperative, acting on principles that could be universalized without contradiction. So Kantian categorical imperative, acting on principles that could be universalized without contradiction. Acting on principles that could be universalized without contradiction. So Kantian categorical imperative, those principles that could be universalized without contradiction, acting on principles that could be universalized without contradiction. Then Gandhi's 7 sins. Gandhi's 7 sins says, if Mahesh succumbs to pressure in order to safeguard his business interests, he will commit the sin of doing commerce without morality. So Kantian categorical imperative and Gandhi's 7 sins, in which one of the sin is doing commerce without morality. So Gandhi's 7 sins, one of the sin is commerce without morality. Gandhi's 7 sins, and one of the sin is commerce without morality. So we are having Gandhi's 7 sins, and one of the sin is commerce without morality. So Gandhi's 7 sins, and one of the sin is commerce without morality. So we are done with Kantian categorical imperative. We are also done with Gandhi's 7 sins. Harmful in the long run. How it is harmful in the long run? Because it will be set a bad precedent, right? So how is it harmful in the long run? Because it will set a bad precedent. What are the reasons? First, Gandhi's 7 sins, that is commerce without morality. Kantian categorical imperative, harmful in the long run. And justice, it is against justice, right? Now, what is censorship by voice and defamation? It is a disturbing trend associated with cancel culture. So censorship by voice and defamation, censorship by voice and defamation is a disturbing trend that is associated with cancel culture and online trolling. So censorship by voice and defamation is a disturbing trend that is associated with cancel culture and online trolling. So censorship by voice and defamation is associated with cancel culture and online trolling. Now, what are the factors, that lead to this? Why people are trolling people online? First is moral disengagement. You don't believe, you don't follow those morals, basically. Moral disengagement. Individuals rationalize harmful behavior by using a justifying lens and sharing blame across groups. So, individuals rationalize a harmful behavior by using justifying language and sharing blame across group. By using justifying language and sharing blame across group. So individuals rationalize harmful behavior by using justifying language and sharing blame across groups. By using justifying language and sharing the blame across groups. By using justifying language and sharing the blame across groups. By using justifying language and sharing the blame across groups. So, moral disengagement, individuals rationalize harmful behavior by using justifying language and sharing the blame across groups. So individuals, they rationalize, yeah, where were we? Individuals rationalize harmful behavior by using justifying language. Individuals rationalize harmful behavior by using justifying language and sharing blame across the group. So they are like, we have not done it. एक तो they deserve it. दूसरा, it is, sharing the blame across the group. So individuals rationalize harmful behavior by using justifying language and sharing the blame across the group. So by using harmful language, individuals, they rationalize harmful behavior by using justifying language. By using justifying language, individuals rationalize harmful behavior by using justifying language and sharing the blame across the group. Perpetual cycle of anger. First is this, second is perpetual cycle of anger. It leads to a lot of anger. So first is the moral disengagement, second is perpetual cycle of anger. Victims of online trolling often turn towards self-loathing and themselves become cyberbullies. So it leads to a perpetual cycle of anger. So first point is with respect to moral disengagement. Second point is perpetual cycle of anger. Third is victim blaming. Fourth is anonymity and lack of prudence. So third is victim blaming, fourth is anonymity and lack of prudence. So perpetual cycle of anger, victim blaming, anonymity and lack of prudence, peer pressure and intolerance. Moral disengagement, peer pressure, intolerance. Moral disengagement is there, right? लोगों के उसमें peer pressure, intolerance, you blame the victim. Anonymity, very important is anonymity and perpetual cycle of anger. Anonymity and perpetual cycle of anger. Israel-Hamas conflict violates the just war theory, core principles of discrimination and proportionality. So just war theory, so it violates, remember, just war theories, core principles of discrimination and proportionality. So it violates the just war theories, core principles of discrimination. And just war theory के क्या core principles हैं? Discrimination and proportionality, कि भाई discrimination मत करो, proportionality में करो. So it violates just war theories, core principles of discrimination and proportionality. So it violates just war theories, core principles. It violates the just war theories, core principles of discrimination and proportionality. So it violates the just war theories, core principles of discrimination and proportionality. So it violates the just war theories, core principles of discrimination and proportionality. Now, what are the ethical issues? Excessive use of force, it violates. As I said, it violates just war theories, principles of discrimination and proportionality. DP, just war theory कहता है कि discrimination नहीं करना and proportionality. Now we'll pick up the issues one by one. So whenever there is a battle, there is always excessive use of force. Irrespective of the place, there is always excessive use of force. So the excessive use of force violates the principle of proportionality under jus in bello and contradicts the utilitarian ethics. So excessive use of force, it violates the principles of proportionality under jus in bello, if you can remember. So wait, let me search what is the difference between just in war, jus bello. Where is my chat GPT? Yeah, so what is the difference between jus in bello and just war principles? I have written that excessive use of force violates the principle of proportionality under jus in bello. Just war theory, it says jus ad bellum, justice of going to war. Whether it is okay, jus ad bellum. Jus in bello means how you have to conduct it. Humanity, proportionality. So jus in bello means how you have to conduct it. Okay. So it is one of the just war principles only. So initially we will start that discrimination and proportionality, and then that any excessive use of force violates the principle of proportionality under jus in bello. So it violates. So any excessive use of force violates the principle of proportionality under jus in bello and contradicts utilitarian ethics. So excessive use of force violates the principle of proportionality under jus in bello and contradicts the utilitarian ethics. Excessive use of force violates the principle of proportionality under jus in bello and contradicts utilitarian ethics. Second is blocking humanitarian access. It breaches the ethics of care. Blocking humanitarian access breaches the ethics of care. अच्छा, blocking humanitarian access, blocking humanitarian access, fine. So whenever there is a war, think of a story. First of all, people will have, there will be excessive use of force, right? Secondly will be, एक तो बहुत force use कर रहे हैं and then they will block the humanitarian access. So excessive use of force. Second is blocking humanitarian access, which breaches the ethics of care. Remember, duty of care, ethics of care, right? So ड्यूटी ऑफ केयर में क्या हमने पढ़ा था, वो प्रोफेशनल एथिक्स एंड ऑल दैट. सो एक्सेसिव यूज ऑफ फोर्स, इट वायलेट्स, excessive use of force violates the principle of proportionality. Blocking humanitarian access breaches ethics of care. Blocking humanitarian access, it breaches ethics of care. Blocking humanitarian access, it breaches ethics of care. So blocking humanitarian access breaches ethics of care. Then lack of accountability undermines justice based ethics. Okay, now we have just post bellum also. Just in bello, just post bellum. See, first is कि जब war हो रहा है, you are using a lot of force. Second, you are not you are having blocking, so even the supplies are not able to go. Third, you are targeting civilians and targeting vulnerable population. So targeting civilians, targeting vulnerable population. So targeting civilians, targeting vulnerable population. And lack of accountability. It undermines justice based ethics and just post bellum requirements. Arey, what is just post bellum requirements? So ethics of war में ही है. Just post bellum is governing the termination of the war. So how should a war be concluded? So 3 things. First, आपने start कहाँ से किया? Principle of proportionality is there. Then blocking. Then using targeting civilians, targeting vulnerable populations, and lack of accountability undermines justice-based ethics. Right? और ये सब जब हो रहा है, when there is humanitarian crisis, when there is lack of accountability, targeting of the vulnerable population, targeting of the civilians, what is the world order doing? So international action, it violates cosmopolitan ethics. International action. And very important thing is generational trauma and social fragmentation. After all this, there is a generational trauma and social fragmentation. So generational trauma and social fragmentation. So after all this, we are having a generational trauma and social fragmentation. Generational trauma and social fragmentation and international inaction. It violates cosmopolitan ethics and just ad bellum's right authority principle. Then remember, we have done this. Let's try to revise this. As per OECD, what is your corporate governance? If I remember, as per OECD, corporate governance is a system of governance controlled and directed, a system where you have rules that control and direct. Something of that line was there. Then what are the features? You have responsibility, accountability, transparency. These were the features. And laws में we had done corporate law, SEBI regulations, and Companies Act 2013, SEBI regulations, and 3 हमने laws पढ़े थे ना, Corporate Act, Companies Act, SEBI regulations, and IBC. Even IBC is there for companies. So that is the right to exit. Yeah, now let's revise it. So according to OECD, it is a system by which companies are directed and controlled. Simple. पता नहीं कहाँ से I was bringing in rules and all. When you're quoting something, at least be genuine. So according to OECD, it is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. So according to OECD, corporate governance is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. So according to OECD, corporate governance is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. So according to OECD, corporate governance is the system by which the companies are directed and controlled. So what is corporate governance? It is the system by which the companies are directed and controlled, and it balances the interests. It balances the interests of the various stakeholders. That is, your shareholders, management, customers, employees, and security. So it balances the interests. It balances the interests of various stakeholders, that is the shareholders, management, customers, employees, and society. And it leads to accountability, transparency, fairness, and integrity. It leads to accountability, transparency, fairness, and integrity. So it leads to accountability, integrity, transparency. Forget this.
According to OECD, what is corporate governance system? By which companies are directed and regulated, and it leads to a social contract. Simple. It balances the interests, bracket में दिखाना है वो, and it makes it a social contract where profit is pursued without compromising the stakeholder trust and societal responsibility. So social contract where profit is pursued, social contract where we are pursuing profit, so where profit is pursued without compromising the stakeholder trust and societal responsibility. So where profit is pursued without compromising the stakeholder trust and societal responsibility. So this makes it a social contract where profit is pursued without compromising the stakeholder trust, and societal responsibility. Now, the core principles are responsibility, accountability, awareness. So, the core principles are responsibility, accountability, awareness, impartiality. So, we know that, right? So, responsibility, accountability, transparency. Apart from that, we are also having awareness and impartiality. So responsibility, accountability, transparency, awareness, impartiality, awareness and impartiality. So awareness is there and impartiality is also there. So responsibility, accountability, transparency, awareness and impartiality, awareness and impartiality. So responsibilities that they must fulfill their fiduciary duty, they are guided by deontological duty ethics. So they must fulfill their fiduciary duty where they are guided by deontological duty ethics, right? So they must fulfill their fiduciary duty where they are guided by the deontological duty ethics. So they must fulfill their duty where they are guided by the deontological duty ethics. Responsibility में you have to mention responsibility or duty. So you can mention deontological duty ethics. Example, Tata ले लो, Infosys ले लो, but Tata, when it comes to duty, for example, someone is unwell, their employee, and you have to pay compensation or all. Tata is more there. So Tata Group's commitment to CSR and ethical leadership. So Tata Group's commitment to CSR and ethical leadership. So Kanti and duty ethics, right? Accountability. The boards and management must remain answerable for their decision. So accountability is that the board and management, they must remain accountable for their decisions. So yeah, accountability is that the board and management, they must remain accountable for their decisions. Like Satyam scam, it exposed the lack of board accountability. Satyam scam, it exposed the lack of board accountability. So we were having responsibility which is guided by deontological duty ethics. So responsibility guided by deontological duty ethics. Accountability is that the board and the management, they must remain answerable for their actions. Like Satyam scam, it exposed the lack of board accountability. So responsibility, deontological duty ethics. Responsibility, deontological duty ethics. Responsibility में we are having deontological duty ethics. Accountability में Satyam scam, it exposed the lack of board accountability. Satyam scam, it exposed the lack of board accountability. Responsibility, accountability, transparency. Honest disclosure and timely reporting. Honest disclosure and timely reporting, they nurture trust and market legitimacy. So honest disclosure and timely reporting. Honest disclosure and timely reporting, they nurture trust and market legitimacy. So honest disclosure and timely reporting, they nurture trust. So obviously agar aap, there will be more trust. Remember TTL, trust, transparency and legitimacy. Virtue ethics, link it with virtue ethics of integrity and truthfulness. ट्रस्ट के साथ हमने सबसे पहले हमने देखा ड्यूटी वाला, राइट, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, देन अकाउंटेबिलिटी, देन ट्रांसपेरेंसी. अवेयरनेस, द मोर अवेयरनेस विल बी. अब अवेयरनेस को किस के साथ लिंक करोगे? लाइक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी को हमने लिख दिया डिओंटोलॉजिकल ड्यूटी एथिक्स के साथ, ट्रांसपेरेंसी को वर्च्यू एथिक्स ऑफ इंटीग्रिटी के साथ. अवेयरनेस, द मोर अवेयरनेस द बेटर द ऑल. सो ग्रेटेस्ट गुड फॉर greatest number. So stakeholder inclusivity will be there, as a result of which there will be utilitarian concerns will be taken into consideration. So stakeholder inclusivity, utilitarian concerns, that is maximizing societal welfare. So stakeholder inclusivity, which will take into concerns the utilitarian concerns and maximizing societal welfare. So stakeholder inclusivity, utilitarian concerns, and maximizing societal welfare. So stakeholder inclusivity, utilitarian concerns, and maximizing societal welfare. यूटिलिटेरियन कंसर्न्स में आएंगी, मैक्सिमाइजिंग लाइक इन्फोसिस प्रो ESG डिस्क्लोजर्स, इन्वायरमेंटल सेफ्टी गाइडलाइंस डिस्क्लोजर, फाइन रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, अवेयरनेस, आई थिंक. अब impartiality, you know, Rawls principle of justice, impartiality example is very good. SEBI's rules on related party transaction, SEBI के rules on related party transaction. So SEBI's rules on related party transaction, SEBI's rules on related party transaction. Now what are the laws that have been enacted? Laws में we are having Companies Act 2013 which codifies the directors. Companies Act क्या करता है, सबकी उसने ड्यूटी बता दी है कि भाई now you have nothing, you know, any sort, there is no sort of ambiguity. I'm just telling you the duties. So Companies Act 2013, it codifies the directors' fiduciary duties, independent directors, audit committees, CSR and whistleblower mandates. So codifies the directors' fiduciary duties, codifies the directors, codify किया इसने directors' fiduciary duties, independent directors, audit committees, CSR and whistleblower mandates. Fiduciary duties. So it codifies the directors' fiduciary duties, independent directors, audit committees, CSR and whistleblower mandates. So it codifies the directors' fiduciary duties, independent directors, it tells you about how many. So it codifies everything, the directors' duty, independent directors, audit committees, the CSR, whistleblower mechanisms, everything. SEBI regulations that are about, remember SEBI, to talk about investor. So continuous disclosure and investor protection. So continuous disclosure, SEBI regulations are about continuous disclosure and investor protection. So they are about continuous disclosure, and investor protection. IBC 2016, it strengthens creditor rights and the right to exit basically. इसमें you have very important example जैसे SEBI का था intra party trading. So Essar Steel's resolution under IBC, Essar Steel, just remember Essar Steel. Do you remember DPDP Act में what were the ethical issues that we saw? एक तो it is directly a conflict between collective good and or public interest versus private privacy, individual privacy, right? Secondly, it is about, you know, the golden mean is violated, ethical proportionality is violated, और क्या ethical issues थे इस केस में? ये तो अभी हमने 4 बताए हैं. गोल्डन मीन, एथिकल प्रोपोर्शनैलिटी 3 बताए हैं अभी हमने, और golden mean, ethical proportionality. Can we bring Gandhi? Yeah, Gandhi's principle, you know, of accountability and truthfulness of civil servants, of public officers. उसके सिवा देखते हैं. Disturbs the golden mean between RTI and right to privacy, Subhash Chandra Agarwal case. Remember this case when you have the golden mean, Subhash Chandra Agarwal case. Disturbs the golden mean, Subhash Chandra Agarwal case. Disturbs the golden mean between RTI and right to privacy, Subhash Chandra Agarwal case. Disturbs the golden mean between RTI and right to privacy, Subhash Chandra Agarwal case. Subhash Chandra Agarwal case. Next is blanket denial of information fails the test of ethical proportionality and constitutional morality. So it fails the test of ethical proportionality and constitutional morality. So it fails the test of ethical proportionality and constitutional morality. So blanket denial of information fails the test of ethical proportionality and constitutional morality. So blanket denial of information fails the test of ethical proportionality. So it fails the test of ethical proportionality and constitutional morality. It is a setback for transparency. It contradicts the Gandhian principles of truth and openness. It contradicts the Gandhian principles of truth and openness in public life. So it contradicts the Gandhian principles of truth and openness in public life, sacrificing public good and collective welfare, sacrificing the public good and collective welfare at the altar of individual privacy. Excessive empowerment, leave all this. It can lead to institutional accountability, weakens participatory governance. So we need harmony, right? So thus both acts, they require harmonization through an ethical framework. So both acts, they require harmonization. Both acts, they require harmonization through an ethical framework, emphasizing proportionality, public interest, and democratic accountability. Three things, three words you have to remember. Proportionality. So proportionality, whenever you are talking about harmonizing, दो act दिए गए हैं, they have to harmonize. So proportionality, public interest, and democratic accountability. So proportionality, public interest, and democratic accountability. So proportionality, public interest, and democratic accountability. Proportionality, public interest, and democratic accountability. So what is corruption? We know corruption is the act of omitting, wait, let's think logically. अभी हम खुद सोचते हैं हमने क्या किया था. So corruption, what was corruption as per us? हमने किया था कल ये. So it is the act of omitting your duties, committing some unethical act, and abusing entrusted power for personal gains, right? इसके बाद we saw that why people they say corruption is bad, but then they engage in first degradation of the moral system. Second, let's think from the perspective of a common person. He doesn't have a choice because of monopoly, so there is lack of choice. For example, the power department or the revenue department. Third, let's talk from the point of view of bureaucracy. They have this mindset, so attitude where they treat stakeholders as they treat people as beneficiaries rather than stakeholders. So they have a donor mentality, right? और इसके सिवा और क्या है? ये तो हो गए 3 पॉइंट्स कि अच्छा लोगों का इसका and the weaknesses, institutional weaknesses, the delay in justice, right? And what is a value system? Value system is a belief, norms, guidelines. And value system से क्या होता है? If you have a value system है तो attitude होगा, right? Then you will make the laws work, right? Grievance redressal mechanism will be there. और क्या था value system अगर अच्छा होगा तो? You will believe in work is worship. You will believe in Gandhi's things. Yeah. So corruption is the act of omitting entrusted duties, committing unethical acts, and abusing entrusted power for private gains. 96, as remember, corruption perception index, we are ranked 96 out of 180. Corruption perception index, we are ranked 96 out of 180 countries. So in the corruption perception index, we are ranked 96 out of 180 countries. In the corruption perception index, we are ranked 96 out of 180 countries. In corruption perception index, we are ranked 96 out of 180 countries. And despite condemning corruption, people still tend to engage because of societal conformity, where individual publicly criticizes corruption but privately hold different views. Lack of choice, which creates a dependency. Power distribution companies. Attitude of public servants who treat citizens as beneficiaries rather than stakeholders. Information asymmetry is there. Ineffective grievance information. Very important point. People don't have information. If you are not having information, you will feel you will not know your rights, duties, and the various mechanisms. So information asymmetry, ineffective grievance redressal mechanism, institutional deficiencies. So IID, ineffective grievance redressal mechanism, institutional deficiencies, like vacancies in, let's say, RTI, right? So in institutional deficiencies, ineffective grievance redressal mechanism, institutional deficiencies, delayed judicial action, lack of fear and assurance of escaping, which leads to relative impunity. So lack of fear plus assurance of escaping. So lack of fear and assurance of escaping, which leads to relative impunity. So lack of fear plus assurance of escaping, which leads to relative impunity. Impunity is the word. A value system, it refers to the norms, beliefs, practices, and faith. So it refers to norms, beliefs, practices, and faith. So value system, it refers to the norms, beliefs, practices, and faith. Value system, it refers to the norms, beliefs, practices, and faith. Value system refers to the norms, beliefs, practices, and faith held by the society. Strengthening the value system is significant because it helps an individual develop an intolerant attitude towards corruption. It promotes transparency and integrity. It supports Kantian ethics of duty. Remember Kantian ethics, ethics of duty, वो deontological कह लो. No, duty के साथ Kantian है. Responsibility is deontological, right? So treating stricter, fine. So we are done with this. हमने कल वाले सारे रिवाइज कर लिए. नाउ विल स्टार्ट विथ फ्रेश. सो आई नीड टू फर्स्ट सर्च. Why am I searching somewhere else? I'll search here only. So one of the major problems that I face is kind of distraction because I'm always studying through home and I'm always studying. So yeah, because I'm always studying at home and I'm always online, there's a lot of distraction sometimes. अब इसके साथ issue, I think I don't have the solutions of MGP, right? One second. It wastes time. I hate this time where I have to search things because a lot of time gets wasted for literally nothing. Oh God. So we have done ethics. One second. As far as I remember, let me just update also. All this is related to the MGP. This was related to ethics 914220. One second. Can I comment right? Revised on 13th June. Yeah. Now let's start with, this is MGP 914217. How many questions are there? There are 6 questions. 6 nahi hote, there are sub questions also. So I think these are also 8 or 9 questions. ठीक है. This is MGP 914217. Let's start. Now in this first, I need to extract the points and think कि मुझे क्या लिखना है. होगा क्या? First question is, greatest risk of emerging technology is not that the machines might outthink us, but that we might forget how to truly think. Oh God. अब इसमें ethical viewpoint लाना है. You know, the agency of humans. How will I write this? This is good for essay, but ethics में कैसे लिखेंगे? The greatest risk of emerging technology is not that the machines might outthink us, but that we might forget how to truly think. Do you agree? Yes, I agree. How will I do this? ठीक है, introduction में तो we can talk about industrial revolution 4.0 is something that is witnessed, right? And as India hosted the recent India AI Impact Summit, the emerging technologies, they have penetrated deep into the society, something of that sort, right? But आगे क्या, आगे क्या लिखूंगी मैं इसमें? We might forget how to truly think. So first can be over dependence on them. Can we write कि negative points क्या हैं उसके, right? We can write that first point, we can write something like we will be over dependent on the machines, right? तो हमारा जो thinking process है वो नहीं रहेगा. Second, that the algorithms that we see, what we can call algorithmic manipulation, right? Or discrimination can seep in. And और क्या? Attention will not be, let's see. अच्छा, it is saying कि counter arguments भी देना है. Okay, so let's try to do this answer. Where is my pen? The greatest risk of, I waste a lot of time writing, but I feel it's all worth it because then you are able to revise better. So greatest risk of emerging technologies is not that the machines might overthink us, is not that the machines might outthink us, but that we might forget how to truly think. Do you agree with the view? एक ही one sided view नहीं लेना होता है. Is not that the machines might outthink us, but that we might truly forget how to think. So emerging technologies like AI, automation, Internet of Things, etc. are reshaping human life in several ways. Although recent advancements have raised the concerns that machines might outthink humans, right? Then you have to say that how they are able to, humans losing the ability. So it has just defined. इसने कैसे start किया है? Because the question is saying greatest risk is not that the machines might outthink us. So इसने बस start कर दिया, एक heading दे दी, एक one side of debate start कर दिया इसने. And it has defined कि मतलब emerging technologies हैं क्या. We can start with the AI summit, but then I feel वो बहुत broad हो जाएगा, like बहुत narrow हो जाएगा वो सिर्फ AI. It's not just AI only. So emerging technologies like AI, automation, Internet of Things are reshaping human life like AI, automation, Internet of Things, they are reshaping human life in several ways. Example, telemedicine, precision agriculture, etc. Although recent advancements in the field although recent advancements, so it has just defined emerging technologies, they are reshaping emerging technologies like AI, automation, Internet of Things. So emerging technologies like AI, automation, Internet of Things, they are reshaping human life in several ways. Although the recent advancements in the field like the concept of artificial superintelligence. Have raised the concern that machines might outthink humans. That machines might outthink humans. So emerging technologies like AI, automation, Internet of Things. So emerging technologies like AI is there, automation is there, Internet of Things is there. So emerging technologies like AI, automation, Internet of Things are reshaping human life in several ways. Although the recent advancements in the field have raised concerns that machines might outthink humans. Okay. Now, how machines can outthink humans? वन इज आपका दिमाग ही खत्म हो जाता है, राइट? द कॉग्निटिव डिक्लाइन. Research on brain plasticity indicates a gradual decline, and इसमें you will quote research on brain plasticity. Research on brain plasticity. Research on brain plasticity indicates a gradual decline in core abilities. Example, memory, concentration. So research on brain plasticity, it really decline in the core abilities. Second is erosion of original thought. एक तो your the core abilities, the ability to memory, concentration. Earlier people knew all the phone numbers by heart, and now it's like we can't even recognize our own phone number. So the brain plasticity is affected. So cognitive decline, research on brain plasticity leads to it talks about the decline in the core ability. So cognitive decline, cognitive decline. Research on brain plasticity talks about the decline in core abilities. Think, सबसे पहली चीज क्या होगी? आप सोचना छोड़ दोगे, right? The decline in the core abilities, that is memory, that is concentration is gone. I think my concentration is also gone. Yeah. So cognitive decline. So research on brain plasticity talks about the decline in the core abilities. So research on brain plasticity talks about the decline in the core abilities. Research on brain plasticity talks about the decline in the core abilities. Then we are having erosion of original thought. एक तो हो गया, you are not able to do the core activities. Then original thought is not there. Whatever you are thinking is like some content or something. So there's lack of original thought, erosion of original thought. Excessive reliance on algorithms and AI can weaken our capacity to question, analyze and reason. Original thought कब आता है? When you can question things, you can analyze and you can reason. Question, analyze and reason. For example, now we don't read the paragraphs and find answers. We just do it on ChatGPT, tell us the answers. So it has distorted the ability to question. Okay, what is this? ये word क्या है? Question, analyze, then reason. Question, analyze, reason, right? It often impedes the pursuit of deeper research. Reliance on ChatGPT summaries over original texts, right? So the original thought is gone. Example, reliance on ChatGPT summaries rather than over original texts. So first thing was cognitive decline. The brain is declining, right? So cognitive decline. Second is erosion of original thought. So cognitive decline and erosion of original thought, or erosion of original thought. Third is shallow knowledge acquisition. What is this? अब अगेन यू आर नॉट थिंकिंग, एक तो आप खुद नहीं सोच रहे हो एंड यू जस्ट वॉन्ट शैलो नॉलेज, यू नो, कहीं से भी बस थोड़ी सी नॉलेज मिल जाए, इंस्टेंट आंसर्स. यू प्रायोरिटाइज द स्पीड over the depth of understanding, prioritizing speed over the depth. How is it different from the first few points? Because the problem that I faced was कि मैंने तो एक ही point बोला था, remember, कि brain is not working. How we will differentiate, how एक ही point से आप बहुत सारे points generate कर सकते हो. That think logically. First we say that the brain is not able to perform its core functions, that is memory, that is concentration. The brain is trained technically to concentrate, yet our concentration is just 2 minutes now. So first thing. Second, we are saying that okay, cognitive decline is there, original thought we are not getting. You know, we are focusing more on the summaries, and also we don't have, or the power to question, analyze and reason on our own is gone. What we are reading is something that is done by others, so the original thought is gone. And third, we are focusing on very shallow knowledge. एक तो हम खुद नहीं करना चाहते, जो किसी से ले भी रहे हैं, that is also, you know, just provide me a very shorthand note. So shallow knowledge rather than depth of understanding. I don't think reliance on ChatGPT summaries should be here. Shallow knowledge over the depth of understanding. Shallow knowledge over depth of understanding. Example, Quizlet's AI tutor. Quizlet's AI tutor. Fourth, loss of human judgment. Loss of human judgment. In loss of human judgment, the data-driven logic cannot capture the nuances. See, first is that you do not have the basic things are gone. Second, the first understanding, the first ability to understand is gone. Then shallow knowledge and also human judgment. See, machines provide you data, right? Data-driven logic. It cannot capture the nuances of ethical, moral and contextual decision making, right? So the data-driven logic cannot capture the nuances, ethical, moral and it cannot capture the nuances of ethical, moral and contextual decision making. The data-driven logic cannot capture the nuances of ethical, moral, and contextual decision making. Example, biases associated with Amazon's AI hiring tool. Fifth is creativity at risk. Machines may process data faster, however, true creativity. So, see, one was human judgment is gone, loss of human judgment, right? And then creativity, right? Creativity which comes from imagination and experience. Creativity that comes from imagination and experience. Right? Example, Mid-Journey's visuals, they lack the lived experience. So creativity at risk. Sixth is attention fragmentation. Now again, attention has to be linked with thinking, right? Because that is the demand of the question. And it can, so we talked about imagination, we talked about first hand, we talked about human thinking, the loss of human judgment. That is not just based on data, but also ethics, morals, right? And attention fragmentation that leads to, that makes reflective thinking difficult. Meta horizon world. Counter arguments. Absence of consciousness and emotions. Machines, they lack consciousness and emotions, right? um, the counter arguments, absence of consciousness and emotions, they lack self-awareness, empathy, unique. So that is why they can never outrun us. But the greatest risk is not that the machines, but we might truly forget how to truly think. So because these things are only with us, see, you have to link empathy, intuition, and linking is very important here. Empathy, intuition, and lived experience. It is unique. So because empathy, intuition, and because empathy, intuition, and lived experience is very much unique to humans, making authentic decision making and decision making beyond machine capacity. So therefore we are only making authentic decision making and that leads to authentic decision making. I don't get this point. Absence of consciousness and emotions, sympathy, intuition, lived experience are unique. Leads to, but only a human doctor. अच्छा example दे दो कि they do not have lived experience. They do not have lived experience and all. They do not.